Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, July 18, 1918 to 5 December 2013, was a South African anti-apartheid activist who served as the first president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He was the country's first black head of state and the first elected in a fully representative democratic election. His government focused on dismantling the legacy of apartheid by fostering racial reconciliation. Ideologically an African nationalist and socialist, he served as the president of the African National Congress ANC party from 1991 to 1997. A Xhosa, Mandela was born into the Thembu royal family in Vizo, Union of South Africa. He studied law at the University of Fort Hare and the University of Witwatersrand before working as a lawyer in Johannesburg. There he became involved in anti-colonial and African nationalist politics, joining the ANC in 1943 and co-founding its Youth League in 1944. After the National Party's white-only government established apartheid, a system of racial segregation that privileged whites, Mandela and the ANC committed themselves to its overthrow. He was appointed president of the ANC's Transvaal branch, rising to prominence for his involvement in the 1952 Defiance Campaign and the 1955 Congress of the People. He was repeatedly arrested for seditious activities and was unsuccessfully prosecuted in the 1956 treason trial. Influenced by Marxism, he secretly joined the banned South African Communist Party SACP. Although initially committed to non-violent protest, in association with the SACP he co-founded the militant Umkhonto we Sizwe in 1961 and led a sabotage campaign against the government. He was arrested and imprisoned in 1962, and, following the Rivonia trial, was sentenced to life imprisonment for conspiring to overthrow the state. Mandela served 27 years in prison. Split between Robben Island, Pollsmoor Prison and Victor Verster Prison. Amid growing domestic and international pressure and fears of racial civil war, President F.W. de Klerk released him in 1990. Mandela and de Klerk led efforts to negotiate an end to apartheid, which resulted in the 1994 multiracial general election in which Mandela led the ANC to victory and became president. Leading a broad coalition government which promulgated a new constitution, Mandela emphasized reconciliation between the country's racial groups and created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate past human rights abuses. Economically, his administration retained its predecessor's liberal framework despite his own socialist beliefs, also introducing measures to encourage land reform, combat poverty, and expand healthcare services. Internationally, Mandela acted as mediator in the Pan Am Flight 103 bombing trial and served as Secretary General of the Non-Aligned Movement from 1998 to 1999. He declined a second presidential term and was succeeded by his deputy, Thabo Mbeki. Mandela became an elder statesman and focused on combating poverty and HIV/AIDS through the charitable Nelson Mandela Foundation. Mandela was a controversial figure for much of his life. Although critics on the right denounced him as a communist terrorist and those on the far left deemed him too eager to negotiate and reconcile with apartheid supporters, he gained international acclaim for his activism. Globally regarded as an icon of democracy and social justice, he received more than 250 honors, including the Nobel Peace Prize. He is held in deep respect within South Africa, where he is often referred to by his Thembu clan name, Madiba, and described as the father of the nation. Nelson Mandela died on December 5, 2013 after a long illness with his family at his side. He was 95. By the time of his death, within South Africa Mandela was widely considered both the father of the nation and the founding father of democracy. Outside of South Africa, he was a global icon, with the scholar of South African studies Rita Barnard describing him as one of the most revered figures of our time. One biographer considered him a modern democratic hero. Some have portrayed Mandela in messianic terms, in contrast to his own statement that, "I was not a messiah, but an ordinary man who had become a leader because of extraordinary circumstances." He is often cited alongside Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. as one of the 20th century's exemplary anti-racist and anti-colonial leaders. Beymer described him as a totem of the totemic values of our age, toleration and liberal democracy, and a universal symbol of social justice. Mandela's international fame emerged during his incarceration in the 1980s, when he became the world's most famous political prisoner, a symbol of the anti-apartheid cause, and an icon for millions who embraced the ideal of human equality. In 1986, Mandela's biographer characterized him as the embodiment of the struggle for liberation in South Africa. Meredith stated that in becoming a potent symbol of resistance to apartheid during the 1980s, he had gained mythical status internationally. Sampson commented that even during his life, this myth had become so powerful that it blurs the realities, converting Mandela into a secular saint. Within a decade of the end of his presidency, Mandela's era was widely thought of as a golden age of hope and harmony, with much nostalgia being expressed for it. His name was often invoked by those criticizing his successors like Mbeki and Zuma. Across the world, Mandela earned international acclaim for his activism in overcoming apartheid and fostering racial reconciliation, coming to be viewed as a moral authority with a great concern for truth. Mandela's iconic status has been blamed for concealing the complexities of his life. Mandela generated controversy throughout his career as an activist and politician, having detractors on both the right and the radical left. During the 1980s, Mandela was widely labeled a terrorist by prominent political figures in the Western world for his embrace of political violence. According to Thatcher, for instance, the ANC was a typical terrorist organization. The U.S. government, state and defense departments officially designated the ANC as a terrorist organization, resulting in Mandela remaining on their terrorism watch list until 2008. On the left, some voices in the ANC, among them Frank B. Wilderson III, accused him of selling out for agreeing to enter negotiations with the apartheid government and for not implementing the reforms of the Freedom Charter during his presidency. According to Barnard, there is also a sense in which his chiefly bearing and mode of conduct, the very respect and authority he accrued in representing his nation in his own person, went against the spirit of democracy, and concerns were similarly expressed that he placed his own status and celebrity above the transformation of his country. His government would be criticized for its failure to deal with both the HIV/AIDS pandemic and the high levels of poverty in South Africa. Mandela was also criticized for his friendship with political leaders such as Castro, Gaddafi, and Suharto, deemed dictators by critics, as well as his refusal to condemn their government's human rights violations.